Hello everybody! Infernape Shinjo here, and welcome back to the next episode of Let's Talk Anime. I have more topics in this video that you guys suggested to me, but before I go into that, I feel like I should need to at least mention this. Over the last couple of episodes that I recorded them roughly back to back, and I noticed that there was some sort of noise in the background. I can't remember if I had a fan on in my room at the time. That's my only guess. So to solve that problem, all my fans in my room are off now. That's not really the best idea, but that's the only way that this video is probably going to be recorded without any sort of noise in the background. But I got a cold bottle of water to keep me hydrated if anything does go wrong. But with all that out of the way, let's get into today's episode. The first topic that I'm going to be covering is Black Clover. And to give a background on this, I watched the first 14 episodes of it very early January of this year, maybe February, and I just stopped. Just for me personally, it was kind of just like, okay, the show's not horrible, the show's not great, it's kind of average, so I just dropped it after like 14 episodes. That's kind of weird considering that there was a plot going on right in the middle of that, but that's what I did. And also, to be fair, in my defense, at that point I was watching videos of people discussing Black Clover, and a lot of them had the same point of how Asta's character is just obnoxious, he's always screaming, and that was probably, at least in part, to why I stopped watching it. But after it was suggested, I figured, okay, I'll catch up on the show and see what's happened. And so that's where I get to the point that I'm at now. At the point that I'm recording this, I've only watched up to episode 31. Actually, episode 32 will probably be out next week, but this video is going to be out way later anyway. So, just to give some sort of perspective. Now, normally I would give the pros first, but I think this time I'm going to get all the negative stuff out of the way, since I can imagine a large portion of it is stuff that has already been brought up with Black Clover. The first thing that I didn't like was the recap episode. I can't remember what episode number it was. I think it was late 20s. I think somewhere around that. I think it was episode 28 because that's when the new opening came in. But even though I wasn't a fan of a recap episode, only 20-30 episodes in, I do like how they handled it. It wasn't just like, hey, remember when this happened, remember when this happened. At least they put a variety and spin on it. The second thing, which is probably obvious, is Asta as a character. He is very noisy and obnoxious, and he screams a lot. But even with that, he does have some moments that do kind of redeem him in a way. That's the best way I can put it. But one thing that's actually funny is I was talking to a coworker of mine maybe early last week before the newest episode came out, and we were talking about Black Clover, and then after that discussion I went into the video, the episode 31, and I realized that Asta doesn't really scream as much as he did in the first episode, so I guess that's one good thing. Granted, you would have to get through the first couple of episodes of Asta screaming, but I guess maybe the writers are trying to make him a little bit better? I don't know. The only other thing I'm not a fan of, which is a very minor nitpick, is I'm not a fan of how they recap scenes when they go to commercial break. Like, say for example, there's a villain in the scene, and then Asta comes out with his sword, and he's swinging, and he attacks the guy, and then he stands down the guy, and they do a little stare down like all shows do, and then we go to a break, and then we come back, and all that happens again. I just don't like that. Now, granted, they do that with a lot of shows that I've probably watched before, but I'm just not a fan of how they recap that much of it. But all that are the negative things that I can find about it, at least in my opinion. So now on to the positives. For one, I really like the plots of Asta and company in that treasure room and at that point in the Capitol when all the villains attack. I like those two little arcs. They're not really too long, they're not really too short. They're enough episodes that they can get the point across, but they don't overstay their welcome. The second thing, which doesn't actually have to do with the technical show itself, is the third opening. I absolutely love it. Black Rover is the title of it. I almost forgot the title for a minute. Honestly, Black Rover itself, the song, was part in reason to why I decided to keep on continuing watching it after it was suggested to me. I can't really explain what it is about the song, I just love the beat. I'm not going to go into too much detail on any of this on the off chance that I haven't posted it yet, but I did make a fan-made opening using Black Clover's new opening. So, if it isn't out yet, look forward to it. If it is out at the time this video is out, I'll probably link it at the end of the video. But I don't know if it's going to be out. The last thing that I like about the show is how they have different little arcs for the characters in the Black Bulls group, because at the episodes that I'm watching now, they have one for, I can't remember what his name is, the guy that has that sister complex or whatever, I can't remember his name. But then when they were in that treasure room, Luck was the group member that came along with them. So I just think that's kind of cool how they kind of include all the group members of the Black Bulls. It just makes them feel like more of a family and less of just like, oh, I work with that person. But that covers all my thoughts on Black Clover. Before anybody even mentions it, I do not read the manga. I don't read the manga on anything, not Black Clover, not My Hero Academia. So I don't know what's going to be coming up in Black Clover, so please don't spoil it for people like me that haven't read the manga. But the second topic of today's video is Kamen Rider. Now I know a lot of people on my previous videos that I posted have suggested for me to use Kamen Rider songs or me discuss Kamen Rider, but I had no real background on anything like that because I've never watched it. I have an idea of what it is, but not that much of an idea. So to give context for the episode that I watched, I think it was called The Bizarre Spider-Man, and it starts with a guy with kind of bug-like eyes riding on a motorcycle, unless that's how all the episodes open up. If that's the case, the title is called Bizarre Spider-Man again. But the plot of the episode that I watched is there's this guy called Hongu, and he is kidnapped by a group that's named Shocker that apparently turned him into a cyborg. And then there's some other plot that's going on where this girl thinks that he killed the father, but he didn't kill the father. I honestly can't remember how exactly it went. But my gosh, I don't even know where to begin with discussing this. First of all, it's weird for me to watch an anime that's live action. I'm not sure if you would consider Kamen Rider as anime, but that's what I'm gonna call it. But it's just weird because, first of all, it's so realistic, obviously, and the anime that I watch aren't really realistic. And let me tell you, if I would have watched these back when I was younger, these scenes probably would have scared the crap out of me. But the things that I like is, obviously, it reminds me of the old Power Rangers series, which makes sense because I think that either Kamen Rider took inspiration from Power Rangers or Power Rangers took inspiration from Kamen Rider. I can't remember which one came out first. But the other thing, it's not really sure if you would call it a pro, but I can imagine it would just be a blast to work while wearing those funny, ridiculous outfits that they have on the show, because a lot of them have like crazy outfits and stuff like that, and I can imagine that would be a blast to work with. And even if the show doesn't really look like it aged that well, it does have that sort of charm that reminds me of when I was younger. Now the things that I didn't like is I'm not really a fan of having some omnipresent narrator that's basically here to give exposition. I'm not sure if that's only a thing in this first episode and it's fixed later on, but I'm just not a fan of having a narrator saying, oh, this person's name is blank. He goes to high school and he does this. And I did kind of already touch on this earlier, but I'm just not that much of a fan of live action sort of anime, because when you have animation that people make either through computers or other stuff like that, it gives you a lot more freedom with the facial expressions. And I noticed that while watching this, that some of the expressions that the characters give look kind of weird when you put them in real life. I did kind of touch on this earlier, but the animation is really showing its age. I can't remember what the year was. I can only imagine it was like maybe 1970s, 1980s, maybe something like that. And finally, things just move a little bit too quickly sometimes for me to catch up, which is why the later half of the episode that I explained earlier, I was kind of confused on what entirely happened. But those are my thoughts on Kamen Rider. And to end off this episode is a little bit of a mini update with my spring 2018 anime watch. I know I posted a video probably last month, right when the spring anime came out, on the anime that I was watching, and I picked up watching a couple more anime after that video was already brought out. The two anime that I picked up are Hinamatsuri and Sword Art Online Alternative Gun Gale Online. So for this last part of the video, I'm going to be discussing Hinamatsuri, mainly because 1, I have a lot more to say about it, and 2, I don't really have the most experience with Sword Art Online in general, so I'm sure there are a lot of references from previous seasons that I wouldn't pick up on. Plus, to be honest, between the two that I haven't discussed yet, I just love Hinamatsuri. So the plot of Hinamatsuri is the most ridiculous plot that you could ever think of. So there's this guy that's a member of the Yakuza, and from what I remember, I think I watched maybe or heard something about how like it's basically a Japanese thug group and you're not allowed to actually say the word in Japan. I can't remember exactly why. If anybody would feel free to fill me in on that, I'd really appreciate it. But basically, he gets home one day, sits on the couch, and next thing he knows, a giant capsule container thing falls on his head, and there's a girl with psychic powers there. And literally, after he sees that, he says, well, okay, I'm gonna leave, and hopefully when I come back, this thing will be gone. But needless to say, she doesn't go away. The show is basically following their everyday antics. The things that I like about this is it is very funny, very entertaining. I love the opening of this song. Personally, the first time I watched the episode, the opening was just like, okay, generic opening, but the more episodes I watched, the more opening grew on me. And to make things even better, Amalie or Amanda Lee voices one of the characters in the dub of it. I'm not gonna say which one, you gotta watch the show for yourself to find out who that is. Another thing that I like is even though the characters do get hurt sometimes, there's no real permanent injuries. One of the characters has psychic powers and she can literally just like lift up people or anything like that and throw them around. But when they fall down, they don't, it's pretty apparent that they don't get hurt. Because when they fall to the ground, they just say something like, ouch or owie or stuff like that. That's just like a little kid getting hurt, and I love that. And even though the show is very funny and sort of out there, it does have heartwarming moments that make you wonder what the genre of it is, honestly. And just for me personally, I like how Hinamatsuri took comedy and took some sort of heartwarming, happy moments and just put them together to make this show. And the last thing that I have to discuss on this is the only con that I could find with the show, which not necessarily a con, but they didn't really bring up where Hina or Anzu came from yet. They both have psychic powers, but I'm hoping that they bring up where they came from, why they have psychic powers, and why they're where they are right now. But above all, I certainly hope that my explanation of Hinamatsuri has encouraged you to watch it, because let me tell you, if you do, I hope that you won't be disappointed. I don't want to give a guarantee on that, but I really enjoy the show, and it kind of reminds me of Konosuba in a way, But that is going to be the end of this video. Let me know if you enjoyed it, and if you did, to Mach Punch that like button down below, and subscribe so you don't miss any other videos. Leave any suggestions for topics on Let's Talk Anime down in the comment section. But that's going to be the end of this episode, and I will see you in the next one. Have an awesome day, everybody.